Hello, welcome to episode number 12. The subject for today's episode is inside Ponzinomics. So Ponzi scheme, I'm sure most of you would know what it is. And Ponzinomics is tokenomics based on Ponzi schemes. And the purpose of today's episode is so that we clearly recognize how Ponzi scheme works, so that we can recognize it better, because it can take different forms. And then, it garners more sort of due diligence, ask more questions and a lot of background checks. Okay, so let's start. So Ponzi scheme, the name was named by Charles Ponzi, an Italian businessman from the 1920s. But obviously, this scheme existed way before that. There's mentioning of this kind of scheme in Charles Dickens' novel back in the 1844. So it has happened before, and I would like to go to the definition, in the economic books, definition of Ponzi schemes. Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investing scam promising high rates of return with little risk to investors. And Ponzi scheme generates returns for older investors by acquiring new investors. So think about this, really, just take your time. Think about low risk, high yield, and you have to get more people in, or you need to get more. You have to pump up the sentiment and bring more investors in. And if you don't do that, it's going to collapse. These are the symptoms. Okay, so that's more or less the definition. The definition is the whole machine doesn't work if you don't bring new investors in. So I think that's a simple way to describe it. All right, second point is I played Decentraland a while back, towards the beginning of this year, and I noticed one thing. There's a game called Ice Poker in Decentraland. So you can complete the daily quest in the game, and you make $200 to $300 a month. And to some players, this is enough to get by, to survive. So some college students, they don't have time to get a second job. They do this, and within two hours or so, they can make $200 to $300 a month. So that makes sense to them. And I thought that was great. That's great. You're generating job opportunities for people, and it beats the hell out of washing dishes, right? So that sounds great. At the same time, you can be an investor. You buy jackets, and let's just say $500 a jacket, and you buy 5 of them. And you do the calculation that in 3 months, you get your investment back, and after that, you get profit. So I was thinking from a video games perspective. So if I have time, but I don't have money, I can make money. If I have money, I don't have time, I can make money. Wait a minute, where does the money come from? So I asked a lot of people this question towards the beginning of this year. And they told me something about token appreciation, meaning you gotta get new people to come in and buy the token, buy Decentraland's token. So they can take the appreciation and give it to people so they stay. So on the surface, it looked great, People who had time but no money, they can make money. People who have money but no time, they can make money. So that sounds great. And it reminds me of there was a period of time on World of Warcraft. There's a lot of commerce happening, and it was great, but that's not Ponzi. So anyway, I'll explain that a little later. So I'm not saying Decentraland is Ponzi, but that mechanism didn't quite work. I mean, it just sounded like it wouldn't sustain. And that's my personal view. And the next example, point 3, is Stepan, STEPN. So in Stepan's scheme, you can buy a pair of virtual sneakers, and they're not cheap. Some of them is like $500 a pair, and it sits in your phone, and it monitors the, I guess, steps that you're taking, and you get compensated for walking. So some people also call that walk to earn. And what I didn't understand is, I like to use common sense. It's like, you're not creating real value in the world, not objective value anyway. Why is the company paying you, compensating you for walking? And, some people, they're just happy to get compensated from walking. And it sounds like it's great, right? It's good for health. But as the bear market comes, because these people who have the virtual sneakers, they're compensated in tokens. So the tokens don't worth as much as before, to the point where it's not a real motivation anymore, because it's really not meaningful amount of money. So you know what they'll do next? They're gonna sell their pair of sneakers, that NFT. So when they start selling it, when everybody starts selling it, we call that a debt spiral. So less value to compensate for people who walk, less people want to buy sneakers. There's no new participants. So again, that does not sustain. And I remember it bothered me a lot. This is a few months back. I really got into deep thinking. I was like, well, how come this doesn't work? This doesn't happen in game industry. We had games that's in operation for more than 10 years. And people in the blockchain or GameFi community, they keep saying, oh, it doesn't sustain. And they think that the reason is because the games they make is not fun. I mean, that's a very superficial reason. I mean, that's certainly true. But I think it goes down to this, the scheme, how the economy works. So, okay, let me keep going. Point 4. When I spoke with people in the crypto space about this, they told me, well, Monty, if you think about it, everything is Ponzi anyway. Real estate is Ponzi, fiat is Ponzi, everything is Ponzi. I mean, yeah, there's some real logic in there, but real estate sustains a lot better than some GameFi project. Wouldn't you agree? And fiat also sustain much better than some GameFi projects. Wouldn't you agree? So I would say reality disagree with that. And I disagree with that. I don't think everything is Ponzi or everything is Ponziable. So I don't want to rationalize Ponzi, and I don't want to give Ponzi any sort of moral ground that it's okay to do that, since it's already in our world, in our society. So that's a non-starter for me. Okay, point number 5. It does not last. I would say this is the biggest flaw with Ponzi, because by definition, you have to bring new investors in, and it keeps growing and growing. So this idea of taking money from Paul and give it to Sam, that just won't last, because at some point you have to pay all of the principals back plus interest. So you may be able to sustain it for a while to get things going, but if you didn't think through the whole thing, and you didn't have backup plan, and if this scheme is based on the assumption that the market doesn't go south, it's a lot of assumptions. So the purpose of this video is not to promote Ponzinomics. It's actually to allow you to identify better, so you don't fall into that traps. And next thing I'm going to talk about is there are alternatives that's legal and and much more sustainable. Okay, so I spent a lot of time thinking about Ponzi and why is it Ponzi, and I go into some of these projects I mentioned earlier, and I read their terms of services, the end user user agreement. Not a lot of people read them, and I spent days reading and I'm looking for things that they are preventing against. So all of these GameFi projects, they hate bots. They don't like bots. Why? Because they're paying people to stay in their game. And in video games, we also had bots. And some games are actually fine with bots because bots move around, they do stuff, and if it's an MMO, you can go and kill them and take away their loots. So bots are actually fine because they're not getting compensated in video games. So I started thinking, free to play has been around since 2005 in China and all over the world. China kind of started very early. I wouldn't say they invented it, but I would certainly say they make it into an industry. Koreans probably started the free to play model, and it really came to fruition in China. And look, it's been 17 years that it is still going strong. This model of 5 to 10% of the players pay for the 100%. So a lot of people, they're in it, they just won't pay, they won't pay. And the game allows that. And people who don't mind paying, they're saving time because they don't like to grind so much, or they want to win more. So some people call this pay to win. Look, game industry has always been consumer driven. If players don't like it, then they won't buy it. And then game companies won't make them anymore. So if it's there, it means some people want it. Some people are willing to pay for it. And I don't think it's wrong to give consumers what they want. All right, point number 7, players to player trade and not compensated by the company. Yeah, so if I'm doing something, if I'm grinding and I win something, I win a hero or I win a sword, and another player in the same game recognize the value of the item that I have and he wants to buy it from me. What's wrong with that? It's actually okay. I think it's great. And blockchain helps that to make that deal transaction secure and no one can interfere. And it also helps, the different currencies. You guys all know all that. So I think the key is player-to-player trading with this alternative to Ponzi. So and the money should not come from the game company. Game company is hosting this game, this environment for players to interact in it. So to avoid Ponzi, you gotta allow them to trade amongst each other. And obviously, I talked about in previous episodes about communal properties. So like 100 people guild can go buy a sword, and the 100 players can timeshare this sword. Eventually, these features will all come out. So important thing is player-to-player trade instead of game company giving money to the players to stay in the game, to come to the game. And I would say pay to stay. I pay a player to stay in my game. It does happen from time to time in video games because I either spend money to buy ads to bring people in, or I pay some money to players to keep them in, or I pay them to come in to try. This is a promotional measure. This is not a business model. So some people say, oh, game companies do this too. It's very different. We do this measured, like $10,000 a month, giving away something. And hey, airdrop in the crypto space is also giving away something for free. So don't tell me pay to stay or pay to come is a bad thing, or it's Ponzinomics. It's not. It's if you do it like one time, that's a promotional marketing measure. Okay, the last point, fun is the key, because you have to give reason, a purpose to players to come to your game. And in a game or metaverse, but if it's a game, then the purpose is fun. They come to your game for fun. So the game has to be fun. And pretty graphics is just not to push them away. And yeah, fun is meaningful to the participants. All right, time's up. Thank you. I hope you enjoy it.